My mother didn't hug me at the door. She just scanned my hand for a ring. Then came her polite smile and the chilling rule that only married kids stay for Christmas. I thought it was her usual humiliation until the hotel receptionist asked if I wanted to route the charges to her master room. I signed the paper. I knew right then that this holiday would end with a $2,400 bill and a dirty secret exposed. My name is Riley Jones. I am 34 years old. I have a credit score that I fight tooth and nail to maintain, and I have a job in compliance that requires me to spot discrepancies in complex systems. Yet, as I stood on the porch of the house I grew up in, shivering in the biting wind of a Briar Glen winter, none of that mattered. I was just the daughter who had failed to secure a husband. The wreath on the door was new. It was a massive frosted thing with pine cones that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I took a breath, watching the condensation cloud the air in front of my face, and rang the bell. I could hear laughter inside, warmth, the clinking of glass. The door swung open. Janine Whitfield stood there. My mother. She was wearing a cashmere sweater the color of heavy cream and pearls that sat against her neck like a collar of authority. She did not smile. She did not open her arms. Her eyes, sharp and blue like shards of ice, dropped instantly to my left hand. She stared at my ring finger for a full 3 seconds. It was bare. Then, her gaze flicked up to my face. The mask of the perfect suburban matriarch slid into place, but it did not reach her eyes. "You made good time," she said. "Hi, Mom," I said, stepping forward, expecting the usual awkward side hug. She did not move out of the doorway. She blocked the threshold like a bouncer at an exclusive club. Behind her, in the warm glow of the foyer, I saw my brother Miles and my sister Tessa. Miles was leaning against the banister, holding a tumbler of whiskey. His wife, Chloe, was adjusting his collar. Tessa was laughing at something her husband, Mark, had whispered in her ear. They looked like a catalog advertisement for the American dream. I looked like a smudge on the lens. "Where is your luggage?" Mom asked. "It is in the trunk," I said. "I just wanted to say hello before I unpacked." "Good," she said. "Keep it there." The laughter in the hallway died down. Miles looked over, his expression shifting from amusement to a vague, brotherly pity. Tessa just took a sip of her wine, looking away. They knew. They absolutely knew this was coming. "Excuse me," I asked. The wind cut through my coat. I felt 12 years old again, standing there waiting for permission to enter my own home. "We have discussed this, Riley," Mom said, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear, loud enough to make sure Miles and Tessa heard every syllable. "The house is full. You know how small the guest rooms are, and honestly, it is just not appropriate. Not appropriate to sleep in the house I grew up in." Mom smiled, a tight, pained expression that suggested I was being incredibly dense. "Only married kids stay at Christmas, Riley. It is a matter of space and propriety. Miles and Tessa have families to consider. They need the privacy. You are just you. Just me, the singular variable, the incomplete equation. So where am I sleeping?" I asked, my voice flat. I refused to cry. I refused to let the sting of humiliation show on my face. "I booked you a room at the Hearthstone," she said, waving a manicured hand toward the center of town. "It is lovely. You will be much more comfortable there. You understand, don't you? It is just for 4 nights. We have to maintain standards." "Standards," I repeated. "Don't be difficult," she snapped, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Go check in. Freshen up. Dinner is at 7. Don't be late, and for heaven's sake, put on some lipstick. You look washed out." She began to close the door. "Wait," I said. "The Hearthstone, Mom. That place is—" "It is appropriate for a Whitfield," she said. "You have a job. You can handle the incidentals. I made the reservation so you wouldn't look homeless to the town." The door clicked shut. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy thud. I stood there for a moment, staring at the frosted pine cones. I could hear the laughter start up again inside. They were safe. They were the married ones. the successful ones, the ones who had followed the script. I was the anomaly that had been excised to a hotel 3 miles away. I walked back to my rental car, my boots crunching loudly on the salted driveway. I got in, slammed the door, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the casual cruelty of it. The way she had turned my relationship status into a zoning violation. I started the engine and drove toward town. Briar Glen was one of those Colorado towns that looked like it had been designed by a committee of people who loved Christmas movies but hated poor people. The main street was lined with twinkling lights. The snow was perfectly plowed, and the shop windows displayed goods that cost 3 times what they should. The Hearthstone Hotel Spa sat on the hill overlooking the square. It was a massive stone structure with a timber frame, radiating wealth and exclusion. A valet rushed to open my car door as I pulled up. I handed him the keys, grabbed my suitcase, and walked into the lobby. It smelled of pine, burning wood, and old money. A 20-foot tree dominated the center of the room. A harpist was playing somewhere in the corner. I felt underdressed in my jeans and parka. I approached the reception desk. The marble was cool under my hands. "Checking in," I said. "Riley Jones." The receptionist was a young woman with a tight bun and a name tag that read, Emily. She typed on her keyboard, her nails clicking a rhythmic staccato. "Jones." She frowned. Then her face cleared. "Ah, yes, here we are. You are with the Whitfield party." I paused. "The Whitfield party." "Yes," Emily beamed. "Mrs. Janine Whitfield has a block booking for the holiday. We have you in one of the executive suites on the 3rd floor. Excellent view of the mountains." My stomach tightened. An executive suite. I did the math in my head. The Hearthstone didn't have rooms for under $400 a night. An executive suite would be at least $600. For 4 nights? That was $2,400. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice tight. "I just needed a standard room." "Oh, the allocation was specific," Emily said, turning the screen slightly so I could see the block layout, though the text was too small to read. Mrs. Whitfield was very particular about who went where. She wanted to ensure everyone had the appropriate accommodations. Appropriate, that word again. Mom wanted to brag to her friends that her daughter was staying at the Hearthstone. In a suite. She wanted the prestige of the booking without the presence of the daughter, and she expected me to eat the cost. $2,400 was a huge chunk of the savings I was scraping together for a down payment on a condo. She knew that. She just didn't care. "I see," I said. "And the billing." I reached for my wallet, resigning myself to the financial hit. I would pay it. I would pay it because I was Riley Jones, the responsible one, the one who didn't cause scenes. I would pay it. And then I would go to dinner and smile and eat roast beef while my mother made passive-aggressive comments about my biological clock. Emily pulled up a form. "Well, since this is part of a master group booking, the system is set up a bit differently." She slid a piece of paper across the marble counter. It was a registration card. "Because Mrs. Whitfield is the master account holder for the group, all the room charges for the block are currently held in a suspense account linked to her profile," Emily explained, her voice professional and helpful. "Usually, guests in the party provide their own card for incidentals, and we can separate the room tax and rate if you prefer, or—" She looked at me, a polite question in her eyes. "Or," I asked, "or, if you are immediate family, which I assume you are, we can just route the entire folio to the master room, that is Mrs. Whitfield's suite. That way, you just sign for check-in, and she settles the total at checkout. It simplifies things for the family." I froze. My hand hovered over my wallet. I heard my mother's voice in my head. "You can handle the incidentals. I made the reservation so you wouldn't look homeless." She expected me to separate the bill. She expected me to pull out my card, tell Emily to split the charges, and absorb the cost of her vanity. She had set the trap, the expensive room, the public display, fully confident that I would be too proud, or too trained, to spring it on her. She had humiliated me in front of my siblings. She had locked me out of my childhood home because I wasn't married. She had treated me like a logistical problem to be solved with a hotel reservation. Only married kids stay. Well, if I was a guest, I should be treated like a guest. I looked at Emily. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt since I crossed the state line. "You know what?" I said, my voice smooth and confident. "That sounds perfect. Please route everything to the master room. My mother insists on taking care of the family at Christmas. She is generous like that." "Of course," Emily said, tapping a few keys. "It is all set. I just need your signature here for liability." I took the pen. The ink flowed smoothly as I signed Riley Jones with a flourish. "Here is your key," Emily said, sliding a heavy card across the desk. "Room 304. Enjoy your stay. Ms. Jones." "Thank you. Emily, I believe I will." I took the elevator up to the third floor. The hallways were wide and silent, lined with thick carpets that swallowed the sound of my footsteps. I found room 304 and swiped the card. The door clicked open. The room was obscene. It wasn't just a room. It was an apartment. There was a fireplace with a gas log crackling behind glass, a king-sized bed with enough pillows to smother a horse, a balcony that looked out over the snow-covered roofs of Briar Glen toward the Rockies. On the table, there was a welcome basket with artisan chocolates and a bottle of wine. I walked over to the desk, where the rate card was displayed under a sheet of glass. Holiday rate: $650 per night. I let out a low whistle, plus tax, plus resort fees, plus parking. My mother had booked this. She had chosen this specific tier of luxury because it reflected well on her. "Look at how well my daughter is doing," she would tell the church ladies. Staying in the executive suite? She just never intended to pay for it. I dropped my bag on the bed. I felt a strange mixture of adrenaline and dread. I had just spent over $2,500 of my mother's money with a single signature. It was a declaration of war. I knew it, but as I looked at the fireplace, I didn't care. I took off my coat and threw it on the armchair. I needed a shower. I needed to wash the feeling of that front porch off my skin. Just as I reached for the zipper of my boots, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text message. From Mom. I picked it up, my heart skipping a beat. Had the hotel called her already? No, that wasn't possible. Emily had just routed the charges. The bill wouldn't be finalized until checkout. I opened the message. "Janine, don't embarrass me at the hotel. I know the manager. Act like you belong there." I stared at the screen. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I know the manager. Of course she did. Janine Whitfield made it her business to know everyone who could be of use to her. But the timing was impeccable. It was almost as if she knew I was plotting something. "Act like you belong there." I typed a reply, my thumbs hovering over the glass. "Don't worry. Mom, I am settling in perfectly." I hit send. I tossed the phone back onto the bed. I walked to the minibar and pulled it open. There was a bottle of sparkling water that probably cost $12. I cracked it open and took a long sip. The war had started. The bill was running. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who was going to pay for it. But as I looked out the window at the dark town below, a cold feeling settled in my stomach that had nothing to do with the winter air. My mother was a woman who noticed everything. She noticed a bare ring finger from 10 feet away. How long would it take her to notice that her credit card authorization had just jumped by $3,000? And more importantly, why did she have a master account at a local hotel? My parents lived in a 4-bedroom house. They didn't host conferences. I looked at the text again. "Don't embarrass me." I had a feeling that by the time this week was over, embarrassment would be the least of our problems. The hotel room was just the beginning. I could feel it. The silence in the room felt heavy, loaded. I sat on the edge of the bed, the expensive mattress conforming to my weight. I was alone. I was single. I was exiled. But I had the room key, and I had the pen. I took another sip of the $12 water. It tasted like victory, with a bitter aftertaste of fear. I checked the time. 6:30. Dinner was in 30 minutes. I had to go back to that house. I had to sit at that table, under the wreath, next to the siblings who had watched me get kicked out, and pretend I was the grateful daughter. I stood up and went to the mirror. I applied the red lipstick she had demanded. It looked like war paint. "Showtime, Riley," I whispered to my reflection. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, leaving the lights on and the fire burning. After all, I wasn't paying the electric bill. The drive back to my parents' house from the Hearthstone Hotel took exactly 7 minutes, but psychologically, it felt like traveling back in time to middle school. I was 34 years old. In my real life, the one that existed outside the Briar Glen city limits. I was a senior compliance officer at Northbridge Compliance Services. I managed a team. I caught regulatory violations that could cost companies millions. I had a 401k and a Honda CR-V that I paid for myself. But the moment I crossed the threshold of the Whitfield residence, my resume disintegrated. In this house, my job title didn't matter. My salary didn't matter. The fact that I had never been arrested or gone to rehab didn't matter. Here, the only currency was a marriage license, and I was bankrupt. I parked my car on the street because the driveway was, of course, reserved for Miles's massive SUV and Tessa's minivan, and walked up the path. Through the bay window, I could see them. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting captioned "Success." Miles was gesturing broadly, probably talking about his investments. Tessa was nodding, looking radiant and exhausted in that way mothers are supposed to look. I took a breath of freezing air and went inside. The heat hit me first, smelling of sage and roasting meat. My mother was holding court in the kitchen. She was stirring gravy with a focus that suggested the fate of the free world depended on its viscosity. "You are back," she said without turning around. "Did you get checked in?" "Yes," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "It is a lovely room, Mom." "Good," she said, finally glancing at me. "Make yourself useful and put the napkins on the table, the linen ones, not the paper." I walked into the dining room. Miles looked up and grinned. "Hey, Riles, heard you got booted to the Hearthstone. Rough break." "It is fine," I said, picking up the stack of linen napkins. "Better water pressure than the guest bath here anyway." "That is the spirit," Miles said, turning back to Mark, Tessa's husband. "So, like I was saying, the contractor quoted us $40,000 for the basement finish, but I told him, 'Look, lumber prices are down. Don't try to high road me. $40,000 is a steal if they do the electrical right.'" Mark nodded sagely. I placed a napkin at my father's seat. No one asked me about my apartment. No one asked me about the rent increase in the city that had forced me to pick up extra consulting hours. In the Whitfield ecosystem, renting was a temporary state of embarrassment, like having a rash. You didn't discuss it in polite company. You only discussed equity. I moved around the table, a ghost in my own family. This was the texture of my life here. My mother had curated a narrative where my singleness wasn't just a circumstance. It was a character flaw. It was a willful act of rebellion against her happiness. I remembered a lunch she had hosted last Easter. Her friend Barbara had asked why I wasn't dating anyone. Mom had laughed, a tinkling, artificial sound, and patted my hand. "Oh, Riley is just so picky," she had said. "She has these impossible standards." I tell her, "Honey, you are not getting any younger." But she just insists on waiting for Prince Charming. Or maybe she just likes being difficult. She made it sound like I was rejecting suitors daily, swatting away decent men with a stick because of some hubris I didn't possess. It was better for her image to have a daughter who was too picky than a daughter who was simply, quietly, alone. Picky implied power. Alone implied failure. And Janine Whitfield did not breed failures. "Dinner is served," Mom announced, carrying a platter of roast beef that looked like it belonged in a magazine. We all sat down. I noticed immediately that my place setting was at the end of the table, near the kitchen door, the runner seat, the spot for the person who fetches the salt. Miles and Tessa sat on either side of Dad, flanking him like lieutenants. "So," Dad said, carving the meat. "Tessa, how is the house hunting going? You guys still looking in the Oak Creek district?" "We are," Tessa said, her mouth full of bread. "But the inventory is so low. We put an offer on a 4-bedroom colonial last week, 5% over asking, and still got outbid. It is brutal. Real estate is a war zone," Mom chimed in, passing the potatoes to Miles first, skipping me. "You have to be aggressive. That is what I told you, Graham. When we refinanced in 2019, you have to move when the market moves." "I know, Janine," Dad mumbled. "Speaking of moving," I said, trying to inject myself into the conversation, "I am actually looking at condos again. There is a development near my office that—" Mom cut me off with a sharp clatter of her fork against her plate. "Riley, please, let's not talk about that." I blinked. "Talk about what? Buying a home." "You know what I mean," she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous, solicitous tone she used when she wanted to shut me up. "We don't want to get your hopes up again. Not after what happened last time. It is just depressing at the dinner table." The table went silent. Miles looked at his plate. Tessa took a long sip of wine. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Last time, referred to 6 months ago, I had found a perfect starter apartment. It was small. It needed work. But it was mine. I had the down payment saved. I had the income. I had walked into the loan officer's office with a binder full of pay stubs, feeling like a responsible adult. I walked out feeling like a criminal. The loan officer, a woman named Sarah who looked about 12 years old, had turned her screen toward me with a pitying look. "I am sorry, Ms. Jones," she had said. "We can't approve the mortgage. Your debt-to-income ratio is way outside our parameters, and there are some irregularities in your credit history." Irregularities. That word had haunted me. I had disputed it. Of course. I checked my Credit Karma app, but it always seemed to show a generic, decent score. But when they pulled the deep report, the hard pull, something flagged. I assumed it was my student loans. I assumed it was the fact that I had moved 3 times in 4 years. When I told Mom, crying on the phone, she hadn't been surprised. She hadn't been angry on my behalf. She had just sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "Oh, Riley, I told you that you weren't ready. You are so disorganized with your paperwork. You probably missed a bill somewhere. This is why you need a husband to handle these things." She had turned my financial rejection into a validation of her worldview. I was incompetent because I was single. "I have fixed my credit, Mom," I said now, gripping my fork. "I have been paying everything down. I am ready." "Let's just enjoy the beef," Mom said, effectively deleting my statement from the record. "Miles, tell us about the promotion. VP of Sales. That is huge." I sat back, defeated. The conversation flowed around me like a river around a stone. They talked about interest rates, about property taxes, about the cost of private preschool. I sat there, 34 years old, eating the food my mother chose, sleeping in the hotel my mother chose, living the life my mother allowed. It wasn't just the criticism, it was the control. I looked at Mom, laughing at something Miles said, her pearls catching the light. I remembered how helpful she had been when I first started working. "Give me your Social Security card, Riley. I will put it in the safe so you don't lose it. Just forward me your W-2s. Honey, our accountant can do your taxes for free." "Why pay TurboTax?" "It is silly. I will handle it. Sign this form. It is just for the car insurance bundling. It saves us all money." I had thought she was being a mother. I thought she was trying to take the burden off my shoulders because she knew I was working 60-hour weeks. I had been grateful. I had handed over my financial identity to her in bits and pieces, glad to have one less thing to worry about. Now, looking at her across the centerpiece of holly and ivy, a cold thought struck me. It wasn't a fully formed accusation yet, just a shapeless suspicion. Why had she been so quick to dismiss the bank's rejection? Why had she never encouraged me to investigate the irregularities? Most mothers would have been on the phone with Equifax screaming. Janine Whitfield had just told me to stop trying. "Riley?" I snapped back to reality. Tessa was looking at me. "Mom asked if you wanted more wine." "Yes," I said. "Please." Mom poured the wine. her eyes scanning my face. "You look tired. Riley, is the job stressful? Maybe you're taking on too much. You know, there is no shame in a simpler career if it means you have time to socialize." "My job is fine. Mom, I actually just got a raise." "Money isn't everything," she said dismissively. Then she turned to Miles. "But for you, Miles, it is different. You have a family to support. That raise is essential." The double standard was so blatant it was almost funny. Almost. Dinner dragged on for another hour. By the time we moved to the living room for coffee, my head was pounding. I needed to get out. I needed to get back to the hearthstone, sit by that expensive gas fire, and pretend I didn't exist. "I think I'm going to head back," I said, standing up. "Long drive today." "Already?" Mom frowned. "We haven't even had the pie." "I am full, really. I will see you all for breakfast tomorrow." "Breakfast is at 9, Mom said. "Don't be late. We are taking family photos at 10. Wear the green sweater I bought you. The red one makes you look sallow." "Okay. Good night, everyone." I walked out to the car, feeling the tightness in my chest loosen with every step away from the house. I got into the driver's seat and checked my phone. There was a notification from my email app. Subject: reservation, confirmation. Hearthstone Hotel Spa. I frowned. I had checked in hours ago. Why was the confirmation coming now? I opened the email. It was a standard automated receipt. "Dear guest, thank you for checking in. Below is a summary of your stay details. Guest name: Riley Jones, room type executive. King suite, rate $650. Night billing routing, master account, Whitfield. J." It was all correct. But then my eyes drifted to the header information. The to field had my email address, but there was a CC field. CC, J. Whitfield home. My mother was copied on my hotel confirmation. I sat there in the dark car, the engine idling. How I hadn't given the hotel my email address today. I had just signed the paper. They must have had it on file from the reservation booking. That meant Mom had put my email in when she made the reservation. That made sense. She wanted me to get the details. But why was she CC'd on the check-in confirmation that wasn't standard? Unless she had set herself up as an administrator on the booking profile. Unless she had specifically requested to be notified of every movement, every charge, every interaction associated with that room. She wasn't just paying for the room, or rather, intending to pay for the room. She was monitoring it. She wanted to know exactly when I arrived. She would probably get a notification when I ordered room service. She would know when I checked out. I looked at the house again. The warm yellow light spilled out onto the snow. It looked so inviting, so safe. But from where I sat, it looked like a panopticon. She knew I had checked in. She knew I was in the suite. And she had still texted me, "Don't embarrass me." She was holding the leash. She had set up this entire scenario, the exclusion, the hotel, the gift, to keep me exactly where she wanted me, dependent, grateful, and under surveillance. But there was something else. Something that nagged at me from the dinner conversation. "You probably missed a bill somewhere." When I was rejected for the mortgage, the bank had sent a formal letter a week later. I had never opened it. I had been too depressed. I had thrown it in a pile of mail on my desk and eventually shredded it, not wanting to see the proof of my failure in black and white. But if there were irregularities, specifically regarding credit history, and if my mother had been handling my taxes and documents for years, I looked at the email again. J. Whitfield home. That email address was the recovery email for my own Gmail account. I had set it up years ago when I was in college and never changed it. A sudden, sick feeling washed over me. It wasn't just about the hotel room. It wasn't just about her needing to control the Christmas narrative. If she had access to my email, and she had my social security number from helping me, and she had a history of handling things, I put the car in reverse. I needed to get back to the hotel. I needed Wi-Fi. I needed my laptop. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I was going to do what I did for a living. I was going to conduct an audit, and for the first time in my life, the entity under investigation wasn't a corporation. It was the woman who had just served me roast beef, and told me I was too picky to be loved. The sun hitting the heavy velvet curtains of room 304 was bright, aggressive, and entirely unwelcome. I had barely slept. My mind had been racing all night, replaying the dinner, the email, and the look on Emily the receptionist's face when she routed my bill. I was lying in a bed that cost more per night than my first car, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the inevitable fallout. It didn't take long. At 8:15 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother smiling at a garden party, a photo I had taken 3 years ago, back when I still thought her controlling nature was just a quirk of her personality. I took a deep breath, cleared my throat to banish the morning huskiness, and swiped answer. "Good morning, Mom," I said. I kept my voice steady, professional. It was the voice I used when a regulator asked why a compliance report was late. "Riley, darling." Her voice was high, breathy, and dripping with a sweetness that I knew was not for my benefit. She was likely in the kitchen, with Miles and Tessa within earshot, perhaps even pouring coffee for them. "Did you sleep well? The Hearthstone is just magical this time of year, isn't it?" "It is very comfortable," I said, sitting up and swinging my legs over the side of the bed. "The fireplace is a nice touch." "I knew you would love it," she chirped. Then, there was a pause. I could hear the clinking of silverware in the background, and then the sound of a door closing. The background noise vanished. She had moved to the pantry or the mudroom. When she spoke again, the sweetness had evaporated. Her voice was low, hard, and devoid of any maternal warmth. "The front desk just called me." I didn't flinch. "Oh, they called to verify the daily hold on the card," she hissed. "They mentioned that the incidentals and the room tax for room 304 had been routed to the master account, to my account." "Yes," I said, standing up and walking to the window. The town of Briar Glen looked like a toy village below. The receptionist said that since it was a group booking under your name, the standard procedure was to route it to the master room. I just signed where she told me to sign. "You know damn well that wasn't the arrangement," she snapped. "I told you I was holding the reservation. Holding it. That means you put your own card down when you arrive. You think I'm going to pay $650 a night for you to sleep in luxury while you disrespect my rules?" "I didn't make the rules, Mom," I said, leaning my forehead against the cold glass. "You did. You are the one who said only married kids stay at the house. You are the one who insisted on the Hearthstone so I wouldn't look homeless to your friends. You picked the executive suite. You created the master group booking. If you wanted me to pay, you should have booked a standard room under my name, separate from your little empire." "Don't you get smart with me," she warned. "You are going to go down to that lobby right now, give them your credit card, and transfer those charges back to you, immediately." "I don't think I can do that," I said. "My card has a daily limit. And frankly, after the mortgage rejection you were so quick to dismiss, I am not sure my credit can handle a $2,400 hit right now. You know how irregular my history is." Silence. It stretched out for 5 seconds, heavy and static-filled. "You are doing this on purpose," she said. It wasn't a question. "You are trying to punish me because I gave Miles the guest room." "I am just following the logic of the situation," I replied. "If I am a child who needs to be managed, then manage me. If I am an adult, treat me like one. You can't have it both ways." "You have no idea what you are playing with," she said, her voice dropping an octave. It was a tone I hadn't heard since I was 16 and caught sneaking out, but this time, it wasn't disciplinary. It was predatory. "You think you are so clever with your little compliance job? You think you can outmaneuver me in this town?" "Mom, it is just a hotel bill. Calm down." "It is not just a hotel bill. It is the principle," she said. "And let me tell you something. Riley, you better fix this. Because if you make me pay for your arrogance, I have ways to make your life very difficult. You want to buy a condo. You want to rent an apartment. I know every landlord and every bank manager worth knowing in Briar Glen. I can make sure you never sign a lease in this county again." I froze. My hand gripped the phone so hard it hurt. "What did you say?" I whispered. "You heard me," she said, her voice regaining that fake, bright composure as the door on her end opened again. "Anyway, darling, breakfast is in 20 minutes. Don't be late for photos. Love you." The line went dead. I stood there in the middle of the luxury suite, shivering. "I have ways to make sure you never sign a lease." It was the confidence in her voice that terrified me. It wasn't the empty threat of an angry parent saying, "I will cut you out of the will." It was specific. It was tactical. It implied that she had leverage I didn't know about. I looked at the breakfast menu on the desk but lost my appetite. I couldn't go to that house. Not yet. I couldn't stand next to her in a green sweater and smile for the camera while she held a knife to my financial throat. I texted Miles migraine. Bad one. Gonna sleep it off at the hotel. Tell Mom I am sorry about photos. Then I sat down at the heavy oak desk, opened my laptop, and connected to the hotel's secure Wi-Fi. If she wanted a war, she was going to get an audit. I spent the entire day in the hotel room. Housekeeping knocked at 11, but I told them to go away. I ordered a club sandwich from room service and let it go cold. I was too busy digging. I started with what I knew. My credit score was decent around 720, but I had been rejected for a mortgage due to debt-to-income ratio and history irregularities. At the time, I had accepted it as a mistake or a result of my student loans. Now, with Mom's threat ringing in my ears, I looked closer. I pulled up my bank statements for the last 2 years. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. My salary went in, my rent and bills went out, but the fear wouldn't leave. I know every bank manager. I can make sure you never sign a lease. Why would she threaten my ability to rent? I lived 3 hours away in the city. Her influence in Briar Glen shouldn't matter to me unless she thought she could impact my record on a national level, or unless she knew something about my record that I didn't. The sun went down, turning the sky a bruised purple over the mountains. I turned on the desk lamp. My eyes were burning. Then, at 7:43 in the evening, my phone pinged. It was a notification from Credit Karma. New alert. An inquiry has been detected on your file. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't authorized anything. I clicked the notification. Alert. Hard inquiry. Lender Mountain West Credit Union. Reason line of credit increase. New HELOC application. Mountain West. That was the local bank in Briar Glen. The bank my parents used. I stared at the screen. Someone was trying to open a home equity line of credit, or increase an existing one, using my name, right now, on Christmas Eve. But I didn't own a home. You can't get a HELOC without equity. I navigated to the credit bureau's main site, my fingers trembling on the trackpad. I needed to see the verification details. If this was identity theft, I had to freeze everything immediately. I logged into my Experian account. I navigated to the Personal Information tab, the section that lists the phone numbers and addresses associated with your identity. There was a pending verification request for the new inquiry. To complete this application, a one-time code has been sent to the number on file ending in I stopped. The air left my lungs. The number didn't end in 4549, which was my cell. It ended in 2280. I knew that number. I had dialed it thousands of times since I was a child. I had dialed it this morning. It was my mother's cell phone number. I sat back in the chair, the leather creaking loudly in the silent room. The room spun slightly. This wasn't just about a hotel bill. This wasn't just about her wanting to control the holiday. My mother's phone number was listed as the primary verification contact for a credit application in my name. And because it was a HELOC, a loan secured by property, it implied that my name was somehow attached to property. But I didn't own property, unless I thought back to 3 years ago. The blur of paperwork she had asked me to sign, just for the car insurance bundling, just to help your father with the tax bracket, just sign here. Riley, I will handle the rest. I had signed. I had signed because I trusted her. I had signed because she was my mother. I looked at the screen again. The alert was glowing in the dim room like a radioactive warning. She wasn't just threatening to ruin my credit if I didn't pay the hotel bill. She was actively using my credit to fund her life. She had made me a co-borrower, or a co-signer, or something. on a loan I knew nothing about, and right now, while she was probably serving eggnog to Miles and Tessa, acting the part of the saintly matriarch. She was applying for more money in my name. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. Janine Miles says you are sick. How convenient. I expect you at breakfast tomorrow. And bring your checkbook. I looked at the message, then I looked at the credit alert. The fear in my stomach began to harden into something else. Something cold and sharp. It was the feeling I got when I found a discrepancy in a ledger that everyone else had signed off on. It was the feeling of finding the thread that would unravel the whole sweater. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about obedience. She thought she was squeezing me for $2,400. She had no idea she had just handed me the evidence of a felony. I didn't reply to her text. Instead, I opened a new tab on my browser. I wasn't looking for flight tickets home anymore. I was searching for property records in Briar Glen County. If my name was on a deed, I was going to find it. And if she had stolen my identity to build her perfect life, I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to burn the house down, brick by financial brick. I pulled the full credit report. It cost me $39.95 for the expedited 3-bureau analysis, but the price of ignorance was far higher. I sat at the mahogany desk in the executive suite, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the room like an interrogation lamp. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together to stop the tremors. I had expected to see the inquiry from earlier that evening. I had expected to see maybe one unauthorized credit card that my mother had forgotten to close after college. I was not prepared for the carnage that scrolled down my screen. It was not just an inquiry. It was a portfolio. There were 2 credit cards I had never seen before. One was a Platinum Rewards Visa with a balance of $12,400. The other was a store card for a high-end furniture retailer, maxed out at $5,000. There was a personal loan taken out 18 months ago for $15,000, currently showing a remaining balance of $11,000. But the item that made the blood drain from my face, leaving me lightheaded and nauseous, was at the bottom of the secured debt section. Account type home equity line of credit, HELOC. Status open. Revolving. Limit $150,000. Balance. Outstanding $85,000. Role co-borrower. Collateral 14. Maple Drive. Briar Glen. Colorado. I stared at the address. That was my parents' house. The house I had been kicked out of yesterday. The house where only married kids were allowed to sleep. My mother had taken out a line of credit against her home, but she had used my credit profile to secure it. I was a co-borrower. That meant legally. I was just as responsible for that debt as she was. If they defaulted, the bank wouldn't just take their house. They would come for my wages, my savings, my entire future. This was why I was rejected for my mortgage. It wasn't because of irregularities. It was because, on paper, I was already carrying nearly $120,000 of debt that wasn't mine. I grabbed my phone. It was late, almost 9 at night on Christmas Eve, but the bank listed on the HELOC was a national chain with a 24-hour service line. I dialed the number. I navigated the automated hell of menus until I finally got a human being on the line. "Thank you for calling," a tired voice said. "My name is Kevin. How can I help you?" "I am looking at my credit report," I said, my voice sounding hollow in the large room. "There is a HELOC listed here that I don't recognize. I need to know when this was opened and who authorized it." "One moment, please. I need to verify your identity." He asked for my social security number. I gave it. He asked for my date of birth. I gave it. "And can you please verify your current address on file?" Kevin asked. 624 West Adams Street, Apartment 4B, Denver, I said automatically. There was a pause. "I am sorry, ma'am," Kevin said. "That does not match the address we have on the master file." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess. Is it 14 Maple Drive?" "Hewer Glen." "Yes, that is the billing address we have. And the correspondence address, also 14 Maple Drive." That was how she had done it. Every statement, every warning letter, every thank you for your business notice, it all went straight to her mailbox. She intercepted the mail before it ever had a chance to reach me. She had created a closed loop of fraud where she was both the criminal and the gatekeeper of the evidence. "Kevin," I said, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice, "I need to know when I was added to this loan. It looks like the original origination date was 3 years ago, in November," he said. "You are listed as a co-borrower with full liability 3 years ago. And how was this signed? Was it electronic?" "It appears to be a mix," Kevin said, tapping away on his end. "The initial application was digital, but the closing documents were wet signed. We have a notarized signature on file." A wet signature. My actual handwriting. I thanked Kevin and hung up. I felt like I was going to throw up. A notarized signature meant I had been there. I had held a pen. I had signed a document that enslaved me to my mother's debt. But I had no memory of buying a house or refinancing a house. I would have remembered signing a loan document for $150,000. I needed answers, and I couldn't get them from the bank tonight. I needed to go to the source. But I wasn't going to call Janine. She would lie. She would spin. She would tell me I was crazy. I scrolled through my contacts and found Dad. Graham Whitfield was a man who preferred a quiet life. He let Mom drive the car, pick the restaurants, and manage the money. He just wanted to watch golf and drink scotch. I had always thought of him as passive but harmless. I pressed call. It rang 4 times. Finally, he picked up. I could hear the television in the background, some loud action movie. He was probably hiding in the den. "Hello, Riley?" He sounded confused. "Everything okay? Mom said you have a migraine." "I don't have a migraine. Dad," I said, "I have a credit report." The line went silent. The sound of the action movie seemed to get louder. "Dad." "I am here," he mumbled. "Riley, listen, it is Christmas Eve. Can we not do this tonight? Mom is already stressed about the turkey brining." "I don't care about the turkey," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I am looking at a home equity line of credit on your house, $85,000 drawn, and my name is on it. Dad, did you know?" "Riley, please," he whispered, his voice dropping so low I could barely hear him. "Don't make a scene. You know how your mother gets. She will be humiliated if this gets out." Humiliated. I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Dad, this is fraud. This is grand larceny. I don't care about her embarrassment. I want to know if you knew. Did you know she used my name to secure that loan?" He didn't answer. I heard a heavy sigh, the sound of a man who had spent 30 years avoiding conflict at all costs. "Dad, answer me." "We needed the money for the renovation," he said finally, his voice thick with reluctance. "The kitchen, the new siding, our credit well, after the business slowed down. Our scores weren't great. The bank said the rate would be astronomical. So you stole mine." "We didn't steal it." He sounded defensive now, a weak attempt to justify the unjustifiable. "Mom said it was just a formality. She said she talked to you. She said you agreed to help us out, just to get the lower rate. She said you were happy to do it." "She said I agreed." "Yes. She told me she called you, and you said it was fine as long as we made the payments, and we have been making the payments. Riley, mostly. I never agreed to this. Dad, we never spoke about a HELOC." "Well, maybe you forgot," he said, grasping at straws. "You were going through a lot back then, with the breakup and the job change." "I didn't forget signing away my financial freedom," I shouted, causing my own voice to echo in the empty hotel room. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "She is in the kitchen." "Dad, there is a wet signature on file, a notarized signature. How did she get that?" "I don't know the details, Riley. She handles the paperwork. I just sign where she points. Look, just come to breakfast tomorrow. We can talk about it calmly. We can work something out. Just don't ruin Christmas." "You ruined it 3 years ago," I said. "You just didn't tell me." I hung up. I couldn't listen to his cowardice anymore. He knew, deep down. He had to have known. He just chose to believe the lie because it was easier than confronting Janine. He chose a new kitchen over his daughter's future. I threw the phone onto the bed and paced the room. My mind was racing, trying to access the memories of 3 years ago. November, 3 years ago. I had just broken up with David. I was a mess. I was living in a studio apartment, barely eating, crying all the time. I had come home for a weekend to get some TLC. I thought my mother was being kind. She had made me soup. She had let me sleep for 12 hours a day. And then, on the last day, she had come into my room with a stack of papers. Flashback. My head is pounding. I am sitting up in my childhood bed, surrounded by tissues. Mom comes in, smelling of expensive perfume and purpose. "Honey," she says, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I hate to bother you while you are feeling so low, but Dad needs a favor. We are reorganizing some of the insurance policies and the trust for the house. Just boring administrative stuff. But we need to update the beneficiaries and bundle the car insurance to save some money." She hands me a pen. She flips through the document, folding the pages over so only the signature lines are visible. "Just sign here," she says, pointing to a line. "And here, and this one is just confirming that you are single now. For tax purposes. Oh, and this one needs to be notarized. But don't worry. Mrs. Higgins down at the bank is a friend. She will stamp it later if you just sign it now. I will save you the trip." I am tired. My eyes are swollen. I trust her. She is my mother. She is helping me. "Okay, Mom," I say, my voice raspy. I sign my name. Riley Jones, Riley Jones, Riley Jones. "Good girl," she says, smoothing my hair. "Now you just rest. I will take care of everything." End flashback. I stopped pacing. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. She had targeted me when I was at my weakest. She had used my heartbreak as a smokescreen to slide a loan application under my nose. She knew I wouldn't read the fine print because I could barely see through my tears. And she had friends who would notarize a document without the signatory present, another crime to add to the list. I wasn't a daughter to her. I was a resource. I was a credit score with a pulse. The realization left me feeling cold and hollowed out. All her criticisms, all her comments about me being picky or selfish or unsuccessful, they were all projections. She needed me to feel small so I wouldn't look up and see that she was standing on my shoulders to keep herself afloat. And now, she had pushed me too far. She had kicked me out of the house to maintain appearances, unaware that by sending me to this hotel, she had given me the time and the solitude to uncover the truth. I walked over to the minibar and poured a glass of water, my hands finally steadying. The shock was fading, replaced by a clarity that was sharp and dangerous. I was going to audit them. I was going to dismantle their financial lies with the same precision I used at work. I was going to find every penny they had siphoned off me. My phone buzzed again. I looked at it warily, expecting another threat from Janine or a plea from Dad. It was a text from an unknown number, a local area code. I picked it up. "Unknown number. I heard you are staying at the Hearthstone. Smart move. Listen to me carefully. Riley, do not go back to that house alone. They are cornered animals." I frowned. Who was this? Then a second text came through. "Unknown number. Meet me at the diner on Main Street tomorrow at 7 a.m. Bring the papers you found. Everett, Grandpa Everett, my father's father, the retired judge who had stopped coming to family Christmases 5 years ago because he couldn't stomach the lies." I stared at the screen. I wasn't alone. And for the first time since I arrived in Briar Glen, I felt a flicker of hope. But it was a grim hope. If Everett was involved, this wasn't just a family squabble anymore. It was a trial, and I was the star witness. I arrived at Flo's Diner at 6:55 in the morning. The sky was still a bruised indigo, the sun barely hinting at the horizon. The diner was warm, smelling of bacon grease and stale coffee, a comforting, honest smell compared to the perfumed deceit of my mother's house. Grandpa Everett was already there. He sat in a corner booth, his back straight as a plumb line. At 82, he still looked like the judge he had been for 40 years. He wore a heavy wool coat, a tweed cap resting on the table next to a steaming mug of black coffee. His eyes, sharp and unclouded by age, watched the door. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He just nodded once, a gesture of recognition and solemnity. I slid into the booth opposite him. I felt small again, but not the way I felt with my mother, with Janine. I felt diminished. With Everett, I felt exposed, as if he could see every mistake I had ever made written on my skin. "Grandpa," I said quietly. "Riley," he replied. His voice was gravel, worn smooth by years of delivering verdicts. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He didn't ask about my job or my love life. He looked at the manila folder I had clutched to my chest, the printouts from last night's audit. He took a sip of his coffee, set the mug down with a deliberate clink, and asked the only question that mattered. "How much have they taken?" I swallowed hard. The directness of it took my breath away. There was no if, no doubt. He knew. I opened the folder and slid the papers across the Formica table. The credit report with the HELOC, the credit card statements, the personal loan, the email confirmation from the hotel with Janine CC'd. Everett put on his reading glasses. He didn't rush. He read every line, his finger tracing the numbers. The silence in the booth was heavy, insulating us from the clatter of silverware and the chatter of the early morning regulars. I watched his face. It didn't twist in anger. It didn't redden. Instead, it seemed to freeze. His expression hardened into something carved from granite. He stopped at the HELOC entry. His finger tapped the paper twice. 85,000, he murmured. "Secured against the house, but backed by your name." "I didn't know," I whispered. "I swear, Grandpa, Dad said I agreed over the phone, but I know you didn't," he cut me off, looking up over his glasses. "You are smart, Riley. You wouldn't co-sign a variable rate loan for a kitchen renovation when you don't even own a parking spot." He closed the folder. It was a final sound, like a gavel striking. "I suspected," he said. "Your mother has always had appetites, for things, for status, and your father has always had a spine made of wet cardboard." He reached into his own coat pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table between us. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. I shook my head. "When you were born," Everett said, his voice lowering, "I set up a trust. A modest one. I did the same for Miles and Tessa. It was meant to be a starter fund, for a house, or a business, or a wedding, if you chose that path." My heart skipped a beat. I never knew about a trust. "You wouldn't," he said, "because 5 years ago, when the fund matured and became accessible, I asked Janine if you were ready for it. She told me you weren't. She told me you were financially irresponsible. She said you asked for it to be held in the family account for safekeeping until you settled down." "I never said that," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I didn't even know the money existed." "I figured," Everett said. "I should have called you directly. That is my failing. I trusted the chain of command." He pushed the envelope toward me. "Open it." My hands were trembling as I undid the clasp. Inside were bank statements, not mine. Statements from a custodial account named the Riley Jones Trust. The opening balance 5 years ago was $120,000. I flipped to the next page. A withdrawal of $15,000. Date June, 3 years ago. Another withdrawal, $20,000. Date November, 3 years ago. I flipped faster. The withdrawals were systematic. 10,000 here, 5,000 there. The dates I recognized, the dates. November, 3 years ago. That was when they renovated the kitchen, the granite countertops, the Sub-Zero fridge Mom had bragged about. June, 2 years ago. That was when they bought the new Land Rover. July, last year. Miles's wedding, the lavish reception at the country club that Mom insisted on paying for as a gift. I stared at the final page. The balance was zero. $120,000. Gone. They hadn't just used my credit to borrow money. They had stolen my inheritance to pay for their lifestyle. The generosity Mom displayed, the gifts, the parties, the upgrades, it was all funded by me. by the money that was supposed to help me build my own life. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my hand over my mouth. "She told me you wanted to leave it there," Everett said, his voice cold as ice. "She said you were saving it for a rainy day. Turns out she was the weather." "They spent it all," I whispered, "every cent, and then when that ran out, they used my name to borrow more." "Correct," Everett said. "It is a Ponzi scheme, Riley, and you are the investor who doesn't know she is playing." I looked up at him. My eyes were burning, but I couldn't cry. I was past sadness. I was in a place of cold, hard shock. "Why, I asked. "Why me? Why not Miles? Why not Tessa?" "Because Miles and Tessa are married." Everett said simply, "In Janine's mind, they are established. They have partners to protect them. You are the rogue element. To her, your money is just extra. It is liquid, and because you are single, she thinks you don't need it as much. She thinks she is entitled to manage your resources because you haven't started your life yet." He picked up his coffee again. His hand was steady. "It stops today," he said. "How?" I asked. "The money is gone. Grandpa, the debt is real. If I report them, they go to jail. Dad goes to jail." Everett looked out the window at the snow beginning to fall. "Actions have consequences. Riley, that is the first lesson of the law. But we don't need to send them to prison to get justice. We need to strip them of the one thing Janine values more than money." "What is that?" "Her reputation," he said. "And her control." He pulled out his phone, an old flip phone that looked indestructible. He dialed a number from memory. "Marion," he said into the phone. "It is Everett. Yes. Merry Christmas to you too. I need a meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. No, it can't wait until after the holidays. It involves fraud, misappropriation of trust funds, and identity theft. Yes, the whole family will be there. Thank you." He hung up and looked at me. "Tomorrow morning, we meet at Marion Holt's office. She's the best family attorney in the state. She handles the messy stuff." "What about today?" I asked. "I am supposed to go there for dinner." "You will go," Everett said. "We will both go. I don't think I can sit there and eat turkey knowing they stole $100,000 from me." "You won't have to pretend for long," Everett said. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, not a happy smile, but a grim, vengeful one. "I will be there. I haven't been to that house on Christmas in 5 years. They will be nervous just seeing me." "And then what?" "And then," he said, leaning forward, "I am going to ask one question before the grace is said. Just one. All you have to do is answer it truthfully. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said. "I can do that." "Good." He reached out and placed his hand over mine on the table. His skin was dry and cool. "Do not let them corner you today, Riley. Do not let them gaslight you. You have the papers. You have the truth. The truth is a weapon. Use it." He stood up, buttoning his coat. "I will see you at 5 o'clock. Don't be late." He left money on the table for the coffee and walked out into the gray morning. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty trust fund statements. I touched the numbers. $120,000. That was my condo. That was my security. That was the reason I had been eating ramen and working overtime while they drove luxury cars and renovated their kitchen. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was my phone, a text from Miles. I picked it up, dread pooling in my stomach. "Miles, Jesus, Riley, Mom is hysterical. She says you are threatening to report her to the police if she doesn't pay your hotel bill. She says you are trying to blackmail her. What is wrong with you?" I stared at the screen. She was spinning it already. She was getting ahead of the story. She knew I had found something, maybe not everything, but something, and she was painting me as the villain to Miles and Tessa before I could open my mouth. Blackmail. She was calling it blackmail. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I took a picture of the trust fund statement, the page showing the final balance of $0.00. I didn't send it. Not yet. I put the phone down and signaled the waitress for more coffee. Grandpa Everett was right. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the narrative. Janine had spent 34 years writing the story of Riley the failure, Riley the burden, Riley the unfinished. Tonight, at dinner, I was going to take the pen back. And I was going to rewrite the ending in red ink. The atmosphere inside the Whitfield house that evening was not festive. It was pressurized. It felt like walking into a room where a gas leak had been detected, but everyone was politely pretending they couldn't smell it. I arrived exactly at 5 o'clock. I wore the green sweater my mother had demanded, not out of obedience, but out of camouflage. I wanted to look like the daughter she expected, compliant, dull, and easily managed. When I walked in, Janine was in overdrive. She was practically vibrating with manic energy, moving between the kitchen and the dining room with platters of appetizers. "Riley!" she exclaimed, her voice hitting a pitch that could shatter glass. "You made it." "Miles said you were feeling terrible." I told him. "It is just holiday stress. She will be fine. Here, take these deviled eggs to the table." She shoved a crystal platter into my hands. She didn't look me in the eye. She looked at my chin, at my ear, at the air behind my head, anywhere but my eyes. She knew I knew something, but she was banking on the presence of Miles, Tessa, and the sacredness of Christmas dinner to keep me silent. Miles was in the living room, nursing a scotch. He gave me a cold look. "Feeling better?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Much," I said, setting the eggs down. Amazing what a little clarity can do for a headache. Tessa was busy wrangling her 2 toddlers, looking harried. "Riley, can you grab the high chair from the garage? Mom says the leg is wobbly, but it should hold." "Sure," I said. I played the part. I fetched the chair. I poured the wine. I let Mom arrange the seating chart. She put me next to Mark, Tessa's husband, probably hoping his droning conversation about commercial real estate would bore me into submission. Then, the doorbell rang. The room went still. We weren't expecting anyone else. "Who on earth could that be?" Mom asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I didn't invite anyone else, unless the Carters are dropping off a gift." She opened the door. Grandpa Everett stood there. He wasn't wearing a Santa hat. He was wearing a dark suit that looked like he was about to deliver a verdict, not a present. "Everett," Mom said, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before she plastered it back on. "What a wonderful surprise. We didn't know you were coming down from the cabin." "I decided I was overdue for a family meal," Everett said, stepping past her. He didn't take off his coat immediately. He walked into the dining room, his cane tapping a rhythmic warning on the hardwood floor. Dad stood up, looking terrified. "Dad? Good to see you. Here, take my chair. I will grab a folding one." "Sit down, Graham," Everett commanded softly. "I will sit here." He pulled out the empty chair at the head of the table, the one usually reserved for honored guests, but rarely used. It gave him a direct line of sight to me, and to Mom, who was now scurrying to set an extra place. "Well, this is lovely," Mom said, her voice a little too loud. "Truly lovely. Everyone sit. The turkey is getting cold." We sat. The table was groaning under the weight of the food-roasted turkey, glazed ham, 3 types of potatoes, green bean casserole. It was a feast fit for royalty, funded by a trust fund that no longer existed. Mom started the conversation immediately, launching into a monologue about the neighbors. "Did you hear about the Millers putting their house on the market? Asking way too much, if you ask me. Their kitchen hasn't been touched since the 90s, unlike ours. Of course, everyone says our renovation really set the standard for the block." "It is a beautiful kitchen, Mom," Tessa said dutifully. "It certainly is," Everett said. His voice cut through the chatter like a knife. "Very expensive materials, granite, custom cabinetry, top-of-the-line appliances." Mom beamed, missing the edge in his tone. "Oh, you know me, Everett. I believe in quality. It is an investment." "Indeed," Everett said. He unfolded his napkin slowly. "Speaking of investments, The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom froze, the serving spoon hovering over the mashed potatoes. Everett turned his head and looked directly at me. His eyes were clear, demanding, and supportive all at once. "Riley," he said. "Yes, Grandpa," I answered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I have been meaning to ask you," he said, his voice conversational but carrying to every corner of the room. "How is the house hunting going with the trust fund I set up for you? Did you find a place you liked? The market is tough, but $120,000 should have given you a very strong down payment." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence where you could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the breathing of the people next to you. Miles frowned, his fork halfway to his mouth. "What trust fund?" Tessa looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Grandpa Mom said there wasn't any money left in the grandfather trusts. She said the market crash in 2008 wiped them out." Mom dropped the serving spoon. It clattered loudly against the china bowl, splattering gravy onto the white tablecloth. "Oh, Everett, don't confuse the poor girl," Mom said, her laugh sounding like a frantic bird. "You know how your memory gets. That money was it was complicated. We discussed this." "I am not asking you, Janine," Everett said. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes locked on mine. "I am asking Riley. Riley, tell me, which house did you buy with the fund?" I looked at my mother. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with panic and a silent, desperate plea. "Don't," she mouthed. "Don't you dare." I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Then I looked at Miles and Tessa. They looked confused, waiting for the punchline. I took a deep breath. I thought about the hotel room. I thought about the mortgage rejection. I thought about the text message. "Don't embarrass me." "I don't have a house, Grandpa," I said clearly. "I didn't buy one." "Why not?" Everett asked. "Because I didn't know the money existed," I said. "I have never seen a dime of it." "Riley!" Mom shrieked. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "That is enough. You are obviously stressed. You are having one of your episodes. Miles, help your sister to the car. She is not well." "Sit down, Janine," Everett barked. It was the voice of the judge now. It commanded obedience. Mom wavered, then sank back into her chair, her face pale. "She is lying," Mom whispered, tears instantly springing to her eyes, weaponized tears. "She is lying to hurt me. She is jealous of Miles and Tessa. She has always been jealous." "I am not lying," I said, my voice steady. "And neither are the bank records." "What bank records?" Miles asked. He put his drink down. "Mom, what is going on? Is there a trust fund or not?" "It was for the family," Mom stammered. "I managed it. I had to. Riley was unstable. After college, she was drifting. I couldn't let her blow it all on nonsense. I held it for her." "You held it?" Everett reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the folded papers, the copies of the statements we had reviewed this morning. He placed them on the table, right next to the centerpiece. "November, 3 years ago." Everett read from the paper. "Withdrawal of $20,000. Purpose contractor payments. Beneficiary account Janine and Graham Whitfield joint checking." He looked at the kitchen counters. "Nice granite. Janine?" "June, 2 years ago," he continued. "Withdrawal of $15,000. Purpose dealership transfer. Beneficiary Land Rover of Briar Glen." He looked at Dad. "That is a comfortable car, isn't it?" "Graham." "Stop it," Mom sobbed. "Stop it. We used it for the family. We were drowning the business. Graham's business was failing. We were going to lose the house. We needed the money." "So you stole it from your daughter?" Everett asked. "You stole her start in life to save your own lifestyle." "We didn't steal it." Dad finally spoke up, his voice cracking. "We borrowed it. We were going to pay it back." "With what?" I asked. "With the $85,000 HELOC you took out in my name without telling me." The room gasped. Tessa turned to Mom, her face draining of color. Wait. The HELOC. Mom, last year when Mark and I were short on the closing costs for our condo, you gave us $10,000. You said you took it out of your retirement account. Mom didn't answer. She was weeping into her napkin now. The victim act fully deployed. You said it was a loan from you, Tessa pressed, her voice rising. You made us sign a promissory note to you. Are you telling me that money came from Riley's credit line? I don't know, Mom wailed. It is all one pot. It is family money. Why does it matter whose name is on it? We help each other. It matters, Miles said. Standing up, he looked furious. It matters because you told me Riley was broke. You told me she couldn't chip in for the anniversary party because she was bad with money. You made me pay her share, but you had her $100,000 the whole time. It wasn't $100,000 by then, Mom screamed. It goes so fast. You kids don't understand how expensive it is to maintain this life. The taxes, the club dues, the appearances. Appearances, I said quietly. That is all it is, isn't it? You would rather commit felony fraud than let the neighbors know you aren't rich. I did it for you, she yelled at me, her eyes venomous. I did it so you would have a nice home to come back to, so you wouldn't be ashamed of your parents. And this is how you thank me, by humiliating me at Christmas dinner. You humiliated yourself, Everett said. He stood up. The room went silent again. He looked at his son, then at Janine. I am done, Everett said. I am done watching you cannibalize your children to feed your ego. He looked at the clock on the wall. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., the law offices of Marion Holt. You know where it is? Lawyer, Dad whispered. Dad, no, please. We can work this out. We can... 9A. Everett repeated. We are going to settle the accounts. We are going to transfer the deeds. And we are going to figure out exactly how much you owe Riley. He looked around the table. If you aren't there, he said, his voice low and final, I will assume you have declined to settle privately, and at 9:30, Marion will file a formal report with the district attorney regarding identity theft, wire fraud, and elder abuse, because let's not forget, that trust money was technically mine until I released it. You wouldn't, Mom hissed. You wouldn't put your own son in jail. Everett looked at Graham, who was staring at his hands, defeated. I tried to raise a man, Everett said. I seem to have raised an accessory. He turned to me. Riley, get your coat. You are not staying here. I am staying at the Hearthstone, I said, standing up. In the executive suite. Don't worry, Mom. I will make sure the bill is routed correctly this time. I didn't wait for her response. I walked out of the dining room, past the tree with its perfect ornaments, past the photos on the mantel that showed a happy, perfect family that didn't exist. I grabbed my coat. Everett was waiting by the door. As I stepped out into the cold night air, I heard the sound of glass shattering inside the house. Someone had thrown something. You okay? Everett asked, as we walked to our cars. No, I said honestly. I feel sick. Good, he said. That means you are still human. Keep that feeling. You will need it tomorrow. He opened his car door, then looked back at me. Get a good night's sleep. Riley, the bill comes due in the morning. The law offices of Marion Holt were located on the 3rd floor of a brick building that dated back to the turn of the century. The air inside smelled of lemon polish, old paper, and expensive hourly rates. Unlike my mother's living room, which was designed to deceive, this room was designed to clarify. There were no soft edges here. The conference table was a slab of polished granite, cold to the touch, and the windows looked out onto the gray, slush-filled street below. It was exactly 9 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day. Most lawyers wouldn't open their doors on a holiday, but Marion Holt was an old friend of Grandpa Everett, and more importantly, she knew that in Briar Glen, the worst crimes happened within families, and holidays were usually the detonator. We sat on opposite sides of the table. On one side, my parents. Janine was wearing a black dress, looking like she was attending a funeral for a distant relative she didn't particularly like. She had her sunglasses on. Though the room was dim, Dad sat next to her, looking gray and diminished, wringing his hands in his lap. On the other side sat Grandpa Everett and me. At the head of the table sat Marion Holt. She was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that magnified her eyes. She didn't offer us coffee. She didn't wish us a Merry Christmas. She simply opened a thick file folder and began to lay out documents in 3 distinct piles, like a dealer laying out a tarot spread that spelled doom. "Let us begin," Marion said. Her voice was dry, devoid of judgment, which somehow made it more terrifying. "We are here to discuss 3 specific matters of financial irregularity involving Riley Jones, Janine Whitfield, and Graham Whitfield." She tapped the first pile. Matter 1, the Riley Jones Trust. Originated by Everett Whitfield. Current balance 0. She tapped the second pile. Matter 2, the home equity line of credit secured against the property at 14 Maple Drive. Co-borrower listed Riley Jones. Current usage $85,000. She tapped the third, smaller pile. Matter 3, unauthorized credit inquiries and open revolving credit lines in the name of Riley Jones, with billing addresses routed to 14 Maple Drive. The silence in the room was heavy. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. "Now," Marion continued, folding her hands, "I have reviewed the documentation provided by Mr. Whitfield and Ms. Jones. I have also taken the liberty of running a preliminary forensic trace on the origination points of the digital signatures used for the HELOC and the personal loans." She looked at my mother. "Janine, before we proceed, do you have a statement you wish to make regarding the authorization of these accounts?" Mom took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her chin was high. She wasn't going to beg. She was going to spin. "I don't appreciate the tone of this meeting, Marion," Mom said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You make it sound like some sort of criminal enterprise. I am her mother. I have been managing the family finances for 30 years. Riley is not good with details. She gets overwhelmed. I was simply handling things for her, protecting her interests. Protecting my interests by spending my trust fund on a kitchen renovation," I asked quietly. Mom whipped her head toward me. "That kitchen adds value to the inheritance you will eventually get. It is all the same pot, Riley. Why do you have to be so literal about everything?" "It is not about being literal, Mrs. Whitfield," Marion interrupted, her voice cutting through the air. "It is about the law, specifically, the statutes regarding misappropriation of fiduciary funds and identity fraud." Mom flinched at the word fraud. "It is not fraud if there is implied consent," Mom argued, grasping at straws. "Riley knew. We talked about it. She might not remember the specific amounts because she was well. She was going through a breakup. She was hysterical half the time. I told her, 'Honey, I will take care of the paperwork.' And she said, 'Yes, Mom, whatever you think is best. That is consent.'" Marion didn't blink. She picked up a sheet of paper from the second pile. "That is an interesting theory," Marion said. "However, the digital footprint tells a different story. We pulled the IP logs for the DocuSign session that authorized the HELOC modification 18 months ago. The session was initiated and completed from a desktop computer located at 14 Maple Drive." Marion looked at me. "Riley, 18 months ago, where were you living?" "I was living in Denver," I said. "I was working 60 hours a week at Northbridge Compliance. I haven't lived at Maple Drive for 12 years. "And on the date in question," Marion continued, consulting the paper, "credit card records show Riley Jones was physically present in Chicago for a work conference. She purchased a coffee at O'Hare Airport at 8:30 in the morning. The loan documents were signed at 9:15 in the morning from a computer in Briar Glen." Marion slid the paper toward my father. "Unless Riley has the ability to be in 2 states at once, she did not sign those documents. Someone logged in as her, answered the security questions which, as her mother, you would know, and forged her digital consent." My father picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. "Graham," Marion said softly, "you are listed as the primary borrower. You signed the wet ink documents that accompanied this application. Did you know your daughter wasn't the one clicking 'I agree' on the screen?" Dad looked at the paper, then at Mom. He looked like a trapped animal. "Janine told me," Dad started, his voice a hoarse whisper. He cleared his throat. "Janine told me she had Riley on the speakerphone. She said Riley was driving and couldn't log in. So she asked Janine to click the buttons for her. I just wanted the loan approved. The contractor was threatening to walk off the job if we didn't pay the deposit." "So you admit you witnessed your wife impersonating your daughter to a financial institution?" Marion asked. "I didn't think of it like that," Dad stammered. "I just signed where she told me to sign. I never read the fine print. I trust my wife." "Your trust," Marion said, "has made you an accessory to a federal crime. Wire fraud is not a domestic dispute. Graham, it is a felony carrying a sentence of up to 20 years. The color drained from Dad's face completely. He slumped back in his chair, looking at Mom with a mixture of horror and betrayal. 20 years, Janine. You said it was legal. You said you had power of attorney." "I do," Mom snapped. "I have the power of attorney she signed when she was 18, before she went to college." "That document," Marion corrected, "expired when she turned 25, and it was limited to medical decisions and educational records. It did not give you the right to liquidate her assets or incur debt in her name a decade later." Marion closed the folder. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Here is the reality," Marion said, leaning forward. "We have enough evidence on this table to have the district attorney issue an arrest warrant by lunchtime. We have the IP logs, the travel records proving Riley's alibi, and the flow of funds going directly from Riley's trust to your personal accounts." Mom let out a strangled sob. "You can't be serious. You would arrest me. On Christmas, I am a pillar of this community." "That is the only reason we are sitting here instead of at the police station." Everett spoke up. He hadn't said a word until now. He sat like a stone statue, his presence radiating disappointment. "I have instructed Marion to draw up a settlement agreement," Everett said. "It is the only way you walk out of this room without handcuffs." He slid a document across the granite table toward them. "Condition 1, Everett listed, ticking the points off on his fingers. "The management of the original trust, what is left of the shell of it, is transferred immediately to Riley. You are removed as trustees. Condition 2, he continued, you will agree to a repayment plan for the $120,000 you stole. This will be structured as a garnishment of Graham's pension and a lien on the house. You will pay her back with interest, calculated at the market rate you denied her. Condition 3, and here his voice grew harder, you will immediately refinance the HELOC and the personal loans to remove Riley's name. I don't care if you have to sell the cars, sell the jewelry, or take out a hard money loan at 20% interest. You will clear her credit report within 30 days. And finally, Everett said, you will sign a formal admission of guilt regarding the identity theft. This document will be held in escrow by Marion. If you ever attempt to access Riley's credit, open mail addressed to her, or interfere with her finances again, Marion will release the confession to the authorities. Mom stared at the document. Her hands were clenched into fists on her lap. This is blackmail, she hissed. You are forcing us to sign this under duress. No, Marion said calmly. We are offering you a lifeboat. The alternative is drowning. And frankly, Janine, looking at these numbers, you have been drowning for years. You just used your daughter as a flotation device. We can't refinance, Dad whispered, staring at the table. Our credit score is in the 500s. No bank will touch us without a cosigner. Then you sell the house, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, detached, powerful. Mom looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. Sell the house. The family home where you grew up. You would do that to us. You did it to yourself, I said. You leveraged that house against my future. Now the bill is due. If you can't refinance the debt you put in my name, You have to sell the asset to pay it off. That is how the real world works. Mom, the one you told me I wasn't ready for. You ungrateful little... Mom started to rise, her face twisting into a mask of ugly fury. I gave you life, I fed you, I clothed you, and this is how you repay me, by stripping us naked in front of a lawyer. You stripped yourself naked when you decided to use your daughter as a credit card, Marion said, her voice sharp. Sit down. Janine. Mom didn't sit. She stood there, trembling, looking from me to Everett to Marion. She was looking for an exit, for a way to manipulate the narrative, to turn herself back into the victim. You are trying to humiliate me, she spat. You want to ruin my reputation in this town. If I sell the house, everyone will know. They will talk. They are already talking, Everett said. But right now, they just think you are living beyond your means. If this goes to court, they will know you are a thief. Which label do you prefer? Janine. She stood there for a long moment, her chest heaving. Then, slowly, the fight seemed to drain out of her. Not because she felt remorse, I could see that in her eyes, but because she realized she was outgunned. She realized the paper trail was a wall she couldn't charm her way through. She sat down heavily. Where do I sign? She whispered. Marion pushed the pen across the table. We spent the next hour going through the documents. It was a grueling, technical process. Dad signed with a shaking hand, looking like a broken man. Mom signed with aggressive, sharp strokes, as if she were stabbing the paper. When the final page was turned, Marion gathered the stack and tapped them on the table to align the edges. There is one last administrative detail, Marion said, reaching for the smallest file, the one containing the hotel information. The matter of the Hearthstone Hotel bill. Mom looked up, a flicker of defiance returning to her eyes. Oh, for God's sake, I told her I would pay it. It was a misunderstanding. She routed it to my room to be spiteful. Actually, Marion said, putting on her glasses and picking up a printout of an internal hotel log. I have the reservation notes here. Subpoenaed records are quite thorough, she read from the page. Reservation made by Janine Whitfield. Date December 1st. Notes entered by guest. Please ensure executive suite is booked for Riley Jones. Block billing is for room rate only. Any incidentals, room service, or amenities must be charged to guest's personal card upon check-in. Do not route extras to master account. Marion looked over her glasses at Mom. You specifically instructed the hotel to isolate her costs, Marion said. You booked a $650 room knowing she would be forced to pay for it, while telling her it was a gift, and then, when she routed it to you, you threatened to destroy her rental history. Marion shook her head slowly. That note, she said, is proof of malice. Janine, it proves that the financial abuse wasn't just a desperate measure to save the house. It was a calculated tool to exert control and inflict pain. Mom went pale. The evidence of her petty cruelty was somehow more damning than the grand larceny. The fraud could be explained away as desperation. The hotel note was pure, unadulterated meanness. Mom started, but she had no words. The bill, Marion said, is currently $2,400 and counting. As part of this settlement, you will be paying that in full. Consider it a penalty for being inhospitable. Marion stood up. The paperwork will be filed tomorrow. If you breach any of these terms, the police will be at your door within the hour. Do I make myself clear? Crystal, Dad whispered. Get out of my office, Marion said. My parents stood up. They looked older, smaller, and infinitely more pathetic than they had when they walked in. They didn't look at me. They walked out of the door, into the cold hallway, leaving their dignity on the granite table. I sat there, feeling a strange exhaustion settle over me. It wasn't triumph. It was just relief. The heavy blanket of their lies had finally been lifted off my shoulders. Everett reached over and squeezed my hand. It is done, he said. Not quite, I said, looking at the hotel file Marion had left on the table. I picked up the reservation note. Charge incidentals to Riley. I have one more stop to make. I said. I need to go check out, and I want to make sure the final receipt has the right name on it. Everett smiled a genuine smile this time. Go. I will handle the filing fees. I walked out of the office, the winter sun blindingly bright on the snow. I had my life back. I had my name back. And for the first time in 34 years, I owed them absolutely nothing. I walked into the Hearthstone Hotel spa with the kind of energy usually reserved for people serving subpoenas. The lobby was still aggressively festive, the 20-foot tree. The harpist playing Silent Night, the smell of cinnamon and money. But to me, it now looked like a crime scene. I didn't go to the front desk. I went straight to the concierge and asked for the manager on duty. Mr. Sterling is in his office, the young man said, looking a bit alarmed by my directness. Is there a problem with your stay? Ms. Jones. Not with the stay, I said. With the billing, I need to clarify a discrepancy regarding the master account instructions before I check out. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Mr. Sterling, a man with a suit so sharp it could cut glass and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ms. Jones, he said smoothly, I understand there is some confusion about the routing of charges to Mrs. Whitfield's room. There is no confusion on my end, I said, but my mother seems to be under the impression that I am responsible for the bill. I need a copy of the original booking notes, specifically, the instructions regarding the incidentals and the room block allocation. I am afraid internal notes are... He started to demur. Mr. Sterling, I interrupted, leaning forward. My lawyer, Marion Holt, just subpoenaed these records as part of a larger fraud investigation involving the account holder. You can give them to me now, informally, so I can settle this family dispute quietly, or you can hand them over to the police when they come to ask why you allowed a credit card to be charged against explicit instructions. I was bluffing about the police coming for him, but the mention of Marion Holt worked like a charm. Everyone in Briar Glen knew Marion. She ate managers like him for breakfast. He typed rapidly for a moment, his face paling slightly. I see. Yes, here's the folio log. He printed a sheet of paper and slid it across the desk. I picked it up. My eyes scanned the standard hotel codes until I hit the guest comments special instructions section. There it was, in black and white. Guest Janine Whitfield master account. Instruction regarding room 304, Riley Jones. Please ensure Ms. Jones is placed in executive suite for family appearance standards. However, strictly enforce all charges room, tax, resort fee. Incidentals are to be billed to guest's personal card at check-in. Do not route to master. Do not inform guest of master block pricing. Tell her it is a standard rate. I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my chest. It was even worse than Marion had summarized. It wasn't just about making me pay. She had explicitly instructed them to hide the master block pricing. That meant she was getting a group discount rate for the other rooms. But she wanted the hotel to charge me the full rack rate, the standard rate. She was trying to profit off my stay. She wanted me to pay full price for a room I didn't want, so she could look like a generous mother who hosted her daughter in luxury. Thank you, I said, folding the paper. This is exactly what I needed. Is there anything else? Mr. Sterling asked, looking like he wanted me to vanish. Yes, I said. Please ensure that the current bill, all $2,400 of it, remains routed to the master room. Do not change it. If Mrs. Whitfield calls, tell her the system is locked pending legal review. I walked out of his office and sat in a high-backed armchair in the lobby. I pulled out my phone. It was time to drop the bomb. I opened the family group chat. The Whitfield Christmas. It was usually filled with Mom's photos of centerpieces and Tessa's videos of the kids. I took a clear photo of the hotel printout, focusing on the special instructions paragraph. I typed a caption, Mom, you forgot to tell the hotel to delete your notes. Family appearance standards shouldn't cost me $400 while you get the group discount. Enjoy the bill. I hit send. I watched the screen. Read by Miles. Read by Tessa. Read by Dad. For 30 seconds. Nothing happened. The harpist played a glissando. A bellhop pushed a cart of luggage past me. Then, my phone exploded. Incoming call, Mom. I declined it. Incoming call, Mom. I declined it again. Then, a message in the group chat from Miles. Miles, what is this? Is this real, Riley? Ask Mr. Sterling at the Hearthstone. He just printed it for me. Tessa. Family appearance standards. Mom, did you seriously book her the expensive suite just for show and then try to make her pay? Rack rate? Janine Riley is lying. She doctored that photo. She is trying to ruin Christmas because she is bitter and alone. I typed back calmly. Riley. I am at the hotel lobby. Come see the original if you want. Also, Dad just signed the confession regarding the identity theft. Ask him about the HELOC while you are at it. That was the kill shot. I knew it. Throwing the HELOC into the group chat was the nuclear option, but after seeing that note, I had no mercy left. My phone rang again. This time it was Miles. I answered. Is it true? He asked. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It sounded hollow. The HELOC, the money, is it true? Ask Dad, I said. He is probably sitting right next to you. He is in the den, Miles said. He is crying. Mom is screaming in the kitchen that you are a snake. She says you are jealous because you don't have a husband, so you are trying to destroy our families. Miles, look at the note I sent, I said, keeping my voice steady. She wrote that she planned to stick me with a bill for a room I didn't ask for, just so she could brag to her friends that I was staying in a suite. Does that sound like a mother who loves me? Or does that sound like a woman who treats me like a prop? There was a long silence on the line. She told me you were broke, Miles whispered. When I paid for the anniversary party, she said you were drowning in credit card debt. She said she was covering for you by letting you stay at the house usually, but this time she had to be tough love. I have a credit score of 720, Miles, or I did, before she took out $100,000 in my name. I am going to talk to Dad, Miles said. The line went dead. I sat there, watching the snow fall outside the massive lobby windows. I felt a vibration in my pocket. Grandpa Everett Marion just called. She is preparing the filing. If Janine doesn't sign the final settlement regarding the hotel charges by noon, we go to the DA. I texted back. She will sign. She has no choice. The group chat just imploded. I looked at the time. It was 10:15. Suddenly, the revolving doors at the entrance spun violently. Janine Whitfield burst into the lobby. She wasn't wearing her coat. She was just in her black dress, shivering, her face blotchy and wild. She looked like a woman on the verge of a breakdown, or a murder. She scanned the lobby frantically until her eyes locked on me. She marched over, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. People turned to look. The harpist faltered. You, she hissed, pointing a finger at my face. You ungrateful, spiteful little witch. Hello, Mom, I said, not standing up. Did you come to pay the bill? Delete it, she demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. Delete that message from the group chat right now. Tell Miles it was a joke. Tell him you photoshopped it. I can't delete the truth, I said. And Miles isn't stupid. He knows your writing style. Family appearance standards. That is vintage Janine. I did everything for you, she screamed, attracting the attention of the concierge. I gave you a roof over your head. I managed your money when you were too incompetent to do it yourself, and you throw it in my face over a hotel bill. It is not about the bill, I said, standing up now to meet her gaze. It is about the fact that you see me as an ATM. You see me as a resource to be mined, not a person. You stole my trust fund. You stole my credit identity. And then you tried to steal another $2,400 from me on Christmas because you thought I was too weak to fight back. You are weak, she spat. You are single. You have nothing, no husband, no kids, no legacy. All you have is your little job and your stubbornness. I built a family, I built this reputation. You built a house of cards, I said. And you used my credit rating as the glue, but it is over. It is not over, she yelled. She lunged for my phone, trying to grab it from my hand. I stepped back easily. Don't touch me. Mrs. Whitfield. Mr. Sterling, the manager, had appeared. He had 2 security guards with him. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice professional but firm. "This girl is harassing me," Mom shouted, pointing at me. "She is refusing to pay her bill. She is squatting in my room block." "Actually, Mr. Sterling said, looking at his clipboard, "the room is under your name, Mrs. Whitfield, as the master account holder, and we have just received a notification from our credit processor." He paused, lowering his voice slightly, but not enough to hide the delight in his eyes. "The card on file for the master account, your Visa ending in 2280, has just been declined." Mom froze. Her mouth fell open. "Declined?" she whispered. "That is impossible. That card has a $50,000 limit." "It seems there has been a freeze placed on the associated assets," Mr. Sterling said. "We received a flag for potential fraudulent activity." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grandpa Everett. "Everett Marion just notified the bank. The joint accounts and the HELOC are frozen pending the fraud investigation. She is cut off." I looked at my mother. The blood had drained from her face. She looked at Mr. Sterling, then at the security guards, then at me. "You froze my cards," she whispered. "You cut me off." "I didn't do anything," I said. "The bank did. That is what happens when you have irregularities in your account history. Right, Mom?" She looked around the lobby. People were staring. Her friends, the wealthy women of Briar Glen who lunched at the Hearthstone, were watching. I saw Mrs. Higgins, the bank notary who had helped her forge my signature, standing by the elevator, looking horrified. Mom realized it then. The audience she had spent her life performing for was watching her final act. And it wasn't a tragedy, it was a farce. "I need to fix this," she muttered, fumbling for her purse. "I have another card. I have the Amex. We can try it at the desk," Mr. Sterling said, "but the outstanding balance for the group block is currently $12,000, plus Ms. Jones's suite." "12,000, Mom screeched. "For 4 days." "You ordered the premium wine package for all rooms," Mr. Sterling reminded her. "And the spa treatments for your son and daughter-in-law, and the private dining room rental." She had spent money like water, assuming the HELOC would cover it, assuming I would cover it eventually. "I need to make a call," she said, backing away. "You can make a call," I said, "but you can't leave until the bill is settled. Mr. Sterling, isn't that policy?" "Indeed," Mr. Sterling said, signaling the security guards to step closer. "We cannot allow the master account holder to depart the premises with an unresolved balance of this magnitude." Mom looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this. You planned this. I just signed the check-in form," I said. "You wrote the script, Mom. I am just reading my lines." My phone buzzed again. A text from Miles. "Miles, I saw the bank alert. Dad told me everything. He told me about the signature, about the trust fund. Riley, I am so sorry. I didn't know. Riley, I know you didn't, but you know now. Miles, I am coming to the hotel. I am bringing my card. I will cover my room. And Tessa's." I looked up at Mom. She was arguing with Mr. Sterling, her voice shrill and desperate. She was trying to hand him a different card, her hands shaking. "I will handle it," she was shouting. "Do you know who I am? I am Janine Whitfield." "Yes, ma'am," Mr. Sterling said. "And right now, you are a guest with a declined payment method." I turned away. I didn't want to watch anymore. It wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It was just sad. She was a woman who had built a cage of gold-plated lies, and now the bars were rusting shut around her. I walked toward the elevators. I needed to pack. I needed to get my things, check out properly, and get back to Denver. But as I pressed the button, I heard her voice one last time, cutting through the lobby noise. "Riley, you can't leave me here. You have to help me." I turned back. She was being gently guided toward the back office by security, away from the prying eyes of the guests. She looked small. She looked old. "I can't help you, Mom," I said, loud enough for her to hear. I am not married. I am just a kid. I don't have the authority to handle family business. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, blotting out the sight of my mother's public unraveling, I felt a weight drop from my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying. The bill was $2,403.17, but the freedom, that was priceless. I pulled out my phone and texted Grandpa Everett. Riley. She is in custody of the hotel manager. Cards are dead. Miles is on his way to bail out his own bill. I think she is ready to sign whatever Marion puts in front of her. Everett. Good work, counselor. Meet me at the car in 20 minutes. We are going to get waffles. I leaned my head against the cool metal of the elevator wall and closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 days, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the person who writes the checks. And my mother was about to learn that when you bounce a check on your own child, the penalty fee is your entire world. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like a descent into a new reality. I had expected my mother to crumble under the weight of the frozen assets, but I had underestimated her instinct for self-preservation. Janine Whitfield didn't just break. She metastasized. When I stepped out, the lobby was quieter. The scene with Mr. Sterling had dispersed, but the tension hung in the air like ozone. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Everett. It wasn't Miles. It was an automated alert from my credit monitoring service, a service I had upgraded to the premium tier just 3 hours ago. Alert attempted transfer of secured assets. Flag due to freeze status. I frowned and opened the app. Someone was trying to move a significant chunk of equity specifically, a draw against the HELOC to an external account. But the account wasn't one I recognized. It wasn't Dad's. It wasn't the joint account. It was an account under the name Vaughn Holdings, LLC. I sat on a velvet bench near the entrance, ignoring the bellhop who asked if I needed a taxi. I pulled out my laptop. If my mother was trying to move money now, while under the eyes of hotel security and with her cards declined, she was desperate. And desperate people make sloppy mistakes. I used my compliance skills, the ones Northbridge paid me a salary to use against corrupt corporations, to run a quick public records search on Vaughn Holdings. It was registered 2 weeks ago. The principal agent, Derek Vaughn. The name rang a bell. Derek Vaughn was the financial advisor Mom had mentioned a few months ago. The man she met at the country club. The man she said was helping them diversify. I dug deeper. Derek Vaughn wasn't a certified financial planner. He was a real estate speculator with a history of flipping distressed properties. And according to the county clerk's recent filings, there was a quitclaim deed prepared but not yet recorded transferring a 50% interest in 14 Maple Drive to Vaughn Holdings. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just trying to pay the hotel bill. She was trying to move the house, the very asset securing the $85,000 of debt in my name, out of her name and into Derek's before the legal settlement could lock it down. She was trying to hide the collateral. If she succeeded, the bank would have no house to foreclose on when the loan inevitably defaulted, and they would come after the co-borrower for the full amount. Me. She was selling me out to save herself. Even now. I called Marion Holt immediately. It was Christmas Day, but she answered on the first ring. She is moving the asset, I said, skipping the greeting. She is trying to transfer equity to a Derek Vaughn. I see it, Marion said, her voice sounding like crunching gravel. The bank just notified me of a suspicious wire attempt. We blocked it because of the freeze Everett and I initiated this morning. But Riley, this is aggressive. She is trying to strip the equity before we can file the lien. Who is Derek Vaughn? I asked. He is her exit strategy, Marion said dryly, and likely her boyfriend, though Graham probably doesn't know that part. I am sending a cease and desist to Mr. Vaughn right now, informing him that accepting any assets from the Whitfield estate would make him a party to wire fraud and money laundering. That should spook him. Do it, I said. And Marion, make sure the hotel knows she is still the master account holder. She is trying to wiggle out of the bill. Way ahead of you. Stay safe, Riley. She is cornered. I hung up, across the lobby, I saw movement. Janine was back. She had somehow escaped the back office, likely by promising to resolve the payment within the hour. She was standing near the concierge desk. But she wasn't alone. A man was with her. He was tall, tan, and wearing a camel hair coat that looked expensive but fit poorly. He was whispering to her, looking agitated. Derek Vaughn. I stood up and walked toward them. I didn't hide. I wanted them to see me. "Mom," I said. Janine jumped. Derek looked at me, assessing me like I was a piece of drywall he needed to estimate. "Riley," Mom said, her voice tight and breathless. "This is Derek. He is a friend. He is going to help us settle this misunderstanding with the hotel." "Is he?" I asked, looking Derek dead in the eye. "Does he know that the misunderstanding involves a federal investigation into identity theft, or that the assets you are trying to transfer to him are currently frozen by a court order?" Derek took a step back. "Excuse me. You didn't tell him?" I asked Mom, feigning surprise. "Derek, my mother is currently under legal review for using my Social Security number to secure $85,000 in fraudulent loans. Any money she tries to give you, or any property deed she tries to sign over to you, is proceeds of crime. My lawyer, Marion Holt, just sent you an email explaining the liability you would be taking on. I suggest you check your phone." Derek pulled his phone out of his pocket. He tapped the screen. His face went from tan to a pale, sickly beige. "Janine," Derek said, his voice low. "What is this?" "This says, Notice of Potential Litigation Regarding Vaughn Holdings." "It is nothing," Mom cried, grabbing his arm. "It is just my daughter acting out. She is jealous. We just need to sign the papers for the house transfer so I can access the liquid cash to pay this bill, and then we can—" "Transfer the house," Derek interrupted, shaking her hand off his arm. "You said you owned the house free and clear. You didn't tell me there was a HELOC on it, or a fraud investigation." "It is a misunderstanding," Janine shrieked, her composure shattering completely. "Derek, please don't listen to her. She is toxic." "I am not getting involved in this," Derek said. He looked at me, then at Janine. "I run a legitimate business. Janine, I can't have my accounts frozen. The deal is off." "Derek, wait." But Derek Vaughn was already walking toward the revolving doors, moving with the speed of a man who realized he was standing on a sinking ship. Janine stood there, watching her escape hatch walk out into the snow. She looked small, defeated, and utterly alone. Then, she turned on me. "Are you happy?" she hissed. "You just chased away the only person who could have saved us. He was going to buy the house. He was going to pay off your stupid loan. He was going to steal the equity so the bank couldn't take it," I corrected. "And you were going to leave me holding the debt. Again. I would have paid you back." "No, you wouldn't have. You would have gone to Cabo with him." Before she could scream again, Mr. Sterling reappeared. He looked exhausted. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, holding a new printout. "Since your payment method has still not been updated, and the total balance for the group booking has now increased due to the late checkout fees and the cancellation penalties for the spa services you booked but didn't attend." He handed her the paper. "The current outstanding balance is $12,840, plus Ms. Jones's suite charges of $2,403, which, per your written instruction, are your responsibility." "I am not paying for her room," Mom yelled. "She is right there. Make her pay." "I cannot do that, ma'am," Mr. Sterling said, his voice like iron. "The account is flagged. We must follow the master instructions until the fraud alert is lifted, and since the fraud alert names you as the perpetrator." He let the sentence hang. My phone buzzed again. It was the family group chat. "Miles' mom. Are you serious? Derek Vaughn? That shady guy from the club. Dad says you told him Derek was just an investment consultant. You were trying to sign the house over to him. Tessa, I am at the hotel. I just saw Derek run out like his pants were on fire. Mom, what have you done?" I looked up. Miles and Tessa were walking through the lobby entrance. Miles looked furious. Tessa looked like she had been crying. They walked right past Mom and came to stand next to me. It was a physical shifting of alliances that hit Mom harder than any lawsuit could. "Miles," Mom pleaded. "Miles, tell your sister to stop this. Tell her to pay her bill." "Mom, stop," Miles said, holding up his hand. "Dad showed me the HELOC papers. He showed me the signature. You used Riley's name. You stole from her." "I did it for the family." "No," Tessa said, her voice shaking. "You did it for yourself. And now I am wondering, when you helped Mark and me with our closing costs, whose money was that really? Was it Riley's trust fund? Was it a loan you took out in my name that I don't know about?" Mom's eyes darted between her 3 children. She saw the wall of unity we had formed. For the first time in our lives, the triangulation didn't work. She couldn't play Miles against Riley, or Tessa against Miles. We were a solid front. "You are all against me," she whispered. "After everything I sacrificed." "We are not against you, Mom," I said. "We are just finally for the truth, and the truth is expensive." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitfield, if you cannot provide a valid form of payment, we will have to involve the authorities for theft of services. The hotel cannot absorb a $15,000 loss." 15,000, the number had climbed. Every minute she argued, every fee that accrued, every service she had pre-booked and failed to cancel was adding to the tally. She was digging her own grave with a platinum shovel. Mom faltered. She looked at Miles. "Miles, honey, please, my cards are frozen. Just put it on your card for now. I will pay you back as soon as the bank sorts this out." Miles looked at her. He looked at the woman who had bought him a car with my money. He looked at the woman who had thrown me out of the house on Christmas Eve. "I can't, Mom," Miles said. "I have a mortgage, and kids, and frankly, I don't trust you to pay me back. I will pay for my room. Tessa will pay for hers. But the master account that is yours." Mom let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. "Fine," she yelled. "Fine. You want to see me ruined? Is that it? You want to see your mother in jail?" "We want you to take responsibility," I said. She stared at me with a look of pure, unadulterated venom. The mask of the loving, albeit strict, mother was gone. This was Janine Whitfield in her rawest form, a narcissist who had lost control. She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "I will write a check," she spat at Mr. Sterling. "I am afraid we cannot accept personal checks for this amount without a bank guarantee," Mr. Sterling said, "especially given the current flags on your profile." "It is a check," she screamed. "It is money. Take it." "Ma'am, please lower your voice, or I will have you escorted off the property." Mom froze. She looked at the security guards. She looked at us. She realized she had no moves left. No Derek, no Miles, no credit cards, no dignity. She turned to me. Her eyes were cold, hard, and terrifyingly calm. "You think you have won," she said softly. "You think because you got a lawyer and turned your brother against me, you have won." "It is not a game, Mom," I said. "Everything is a game, Riley," she said. "And you have just played your last card. You want to audit me, fine. But remember, I know where the skeletons are buried because I put them there." She turned to Mr. Sterling. "Call the police," she said, lifting her chin. "I have nothing else to give you. My children have stripped me of my assets. Let the police come. It will make a wonderful story for the papers. Won't it? Riley daughter sends mother to jail on Christmas." She was bluffing. She had to be. She was betting that we would crack. She was betting that the shame of seeing our mother arrested would force us to pay the bill. I looked at Miles. He looked terrified. "Riley," he whispered, "we can't let them arrest her." "That is what she wants," I whispered back. "She is holding herself hostage." I looked at Mom. She was smiling a tiny, triumphant smile. She thought she had found the one lever we couldn't ignore our own guilt. I took a deep breath. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "before you call the police, I suggest you call Marion Holt's office. She has the settlement agreement my mother signed this morning. It includes a provision for the liquidation of household assets to cover debts. You can place a lien on her jewelry. That diamond ring on her finger is insured for $20,000. Mom's hand flew to her left hand, covering her massive engagement ring. You wouldn't, she gasped. It is an asset, I said coldly. And you have a debt. Liquidity is liquidity. Mom, isn't that what you always told me? Mr. Sterling looked at the ring. That would certainly secure the balance until the bank freeze is lifted. Mom looked at the ring. It was her pride, her status symbol, the proof that she was a Whitfield. Take it off, I said. She stared at me. For a moment, I thought she would actually choose jail. Then, slowly, shaking with rage, she slid the ring off her finger. She slammed it onto the concierge desk. There, she snarled. Are you satisfied? Not yet, I said, but it is a start. Mr. Sterling took the ring carefully. I will place this in the hotel safe and issue a receipt. The police will not be necessary. Mom grabbed the receipt. She didn't look at Miles. She didn't look at Tessa. She walked straight up to me, invading my personal space until I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sweat of panic. This isn't over, she whispered. Tomorrow, meet me at the house, 10 o'clock. I will show you exactly what happens when you bite the hand that fed you. I will be there, I said. With Everett. Bring him, she sneered. Bring the whole damn town. I will show you who really wins. She spun around and marched out of the hotel, head high, ring finger bare, leaving a wake of silence and $15,000 of debt behind her. I watched her go. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from adrenaline. She is planning something, Miles said, watching the door. She never gives up. I know, I said, but neither do I. I looked at the finalized bill Mr. Sterling handed me for my room. Master room charge, $2. $403.17, paid by security deposit diamond ring. I took a picture of it. Come on, I said to my siblings. Let's go get some waffles with Grandpa. I have a feeling we are going to need our strength for tomorrow. The text message from Janine came through just as we stepped outside. Janine. See you tomorrow. I will show you who the real winner is. I didn't reply. I just deleted the thread. The audit was over. The liquidation had begun. The clock on the wall of Marion Holt's conference room read exactly 10 in the morning. The air in the room was stale, recycled, and thick with the impending end of a 30-year reign of terror. We were all there, the entire cast of the Whitfield family drama, seated around the granite table like we were waiting for an executioner. On one side, me and Grandpa Everett. On the other, Janine and Graham, my siblings, Miles and Tessa, sat at the far end, looking like children who had just learned Santa Claus was actually a pickpocket. But there was one extra chair. Derek Vaughn was sitting next to my mother. She had somehow dragged him back. I assumed she had spun him a frantic new web of lies overnight, probably telling him that the fraud alerts were a banking error, that I was a vindictive daughter trying to steal her inheritance, and that she needed him as a character witness to prove she was a stable, wealthy woman. He looked nervous, tapping his gold watch, clearly regretting whatever promise he had made to her in the desperate hours of the morning. Marion Holt entered the room carrying a file box that looked heavy enough to crush a skull. She dropped it on the table with a thud that made Derek jump. "Let us not waste time," Marion said, her voice crisp. "We are here to execute a settlement agreement in lieu of criminal prosecution. I have prepared the summary of facts." She began to lay out the documents, one by one, forming a grid of evidence on the polished stone. Item 1, Marion said, the custodial trust fund established by Everett Whitfield. Original principal $120,000, with calculated compound interest at the market rate over 5 years. The restitution value is $148,000. Item 2, she continued, the home equity line of credit secured by the property at 14 Maple Drive. Outstanding balance $85,000. Co-borrower Riley Jones. Signature forged. Item 3. She laid down the stack of hotel records. The Hearthstone Hotel Folio. Total charges incurred under false pretenses with malicious intent $2,403.17. Janine sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was wearing her best suit, a Chanel knockoff, trying to project an air of imperious dignity. "This is ridiculous," Janine said, her voice tight. "Derek, are you hearing this? They are treating family finances like a corporate raid. I told you. Riley is confused. She agreed to all of this." Derek cleared his throat. "Janine said there was a misunderstanding about the paperwork. She said she has power of attorney." "She does not," Marion said, sliding a paper across the table toward Derek. "Here is the revocation of power of attorney, dated 7 years ago, and here is the IP log showing Janine accessing Riley's credit file yesterday to attempt a transfer of assets to Vaughn Holdings." Derek froze. He picked up the paper. "You tried to transfer the house to my LLC yesterday," Derek asked Janine, "after I walked out." "I was trying to protect the asset," Janine hissed. "For us, so we could invest it." "You were trying to launder a fraudulent asset through his company," Marion corrected, "which would have made Mr. Vaughn an accessory to a federal crime." Derek dropped the paper as if it were burning. He shifted his chair a few inches away from her. "Janine," Marion said, ignoring the side drama, "the offer on the table is simple. Everett and Riley have agreed not to file the police report regarding the identity theft and the wire fraud, provided you agree to the following terms immediately." Marion pushed a thick document toward her. "1. Control of the remaining trust assets, if any exist, is transferred to Riley. 2. You and Graham agree to a binding repayment plan for the full amount of $148,000, secured by a second lien on the house. 3. You will refinance the HELOC within 90 days to remove Riley's name. If you cannot refinance, the house goes on the market on day 91. And 4, Marion said, her eyes narrowing, you will sign a permanent cease and desist regarding Riley's financial identity. You will surrender all documents, social security cards, and access codes you hold in her name." Janine looked at the document. She looked at the numbers. "I can't sign this," she whispered. "If I put a lien on the house, I can't sell it. I can't leverage it. You are freezing my liquidity." "You don't have liquidity." "Janine," I said, speaking for the first time. "You have debt. You have my debt." "I did it for you," she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. The sudden noise made Graham flinch. "I did it for this family. You ungrateful child. I built that kitchen so you would have a nice place to visit. I bought that car so your father could drive you to the airport in safety. I managed the money because you weren't ready." "I wasn't ready," I asked quietly. "No, you were drifting. You were single. You were renting a shoebox in Denver. I was protecting the capital until you settled down." "You weren't keeping the money for me," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You were keeping me poor. You kept me at a low credit score. You kept me renting. You kept me struggling, so that you could always be the savior. You needed me to be the failure so you could be the successful matriarch. You stole my stability to buy your granite countertops. It is not stealing if it is family," she yelled. She turned to Derek. Tell them how finances work in the real world." Derek stood up. He buttoned his camel hair coat. "I think I have seen enough of how your finances work." "Janine," Derek said coldly, "I run a business. I don't run a charity for felons." "Derek," Janine gasped. "Where are you going?" "I am leaving," Derek said. "And Janine, don't call me. My lawyer will be in touch about the unauthorized use of my LLC name in your banking attempts." He walked out. The door clicked shut. Janine stared at the closed door. Her witness, her escape hatch, her last shred of external validation, was gone. She slumped in her chair, beside her. Dad finally spoke. "Janine," he whispered, "sign the paper." "What?" she snapped at him. "Sign it," Graham said, his voice trembling but firm. "I am not going to jail. I am too old for prison. Janine, And I am tired. I am so tired of the lies. You are taking her side, Janine asked, betrayed. I am taking the side that keeps me a free man, Dad said. He reached for the pen. He signed his name on the line marked Graham Whitfield. His hand shook, but the ink flowed. He pushed the document to her. Sign it, or I will testify against you, Dad said. Janine looked at him with absolute shock. The worm had finally turned. Her husband, her enabler, had reached his limit. She looked at Miles and Tessa. They were staring at their feet, refusing to make eye contact. They weren't coming to save her. She looked at me. You have destroyed this family, she said, her voice filled with a cold, focused hatred. I hope you know that. You have torn us apart over money. I fixed what you broke, I said. Sign. She picked up the pen. She stared at the paper for a long time. Then, with a scream of frustration that sounded like an animal caught in a trap, she scribbled her signature, Janine Whitfield. Marion Holt snatched the paper away the moment the pen lifted. Notarized, Marion said, stamping it with a heavy thud. The lien will be filed within the hour. Marion then reached into her file and pulled out one last piece of paper. It was a receipt. And finally, Marion said, the matter of the hotel bill, $2,403.17, paid in full via the liquidation of one diamond engagement ring, surrendered yesterday. She handed the receipt to Mom. Here is your proof of payment. The ring sold to a local jeweler this morning for, well, slightly more than the bill. We have applied the surplus to your legal fees. Mom stared at the receipt. Her hand went to her bare finger. She looked naked without the rock. It was the symbol of her marriage, her status, her self-worth, and she had lost it to pay for a hotel room she tried to use to humiliate me. You sold my ring, she whispered. You sold my future, I replied. I think we are even. I stood up. Marion, do you have the access codes? I asked. Right here, Marion said, handing me a sealed envelope. These are the reset codes for your Social Security profile, the credit bureaus, and the new passwords for the trust account management. Your parents have been removed as authorized users. I took the envelope. It felt light, but it held the weight of my entire life. Thank you, Marion, I said. Grandpa, are you coming? Everett stood up. He looked at his son and his daughter-in-law. I will be spending the rest of the holiday at the Hearthstone, Everett said. I believe Riley has a suite with a fireplace. It sounds much warmer than this house. We turned to leave. Riley. I stopped at the door. I didn't turn around. It was my mother's voice. You think you can just walk away? She sneered. You think you can survive out there without me? You will fail. You always fail. And when you come crawling back, don't expect the door to be open. You will regret this. I paused. I thought about the fear I used to feel when she spoke like that. I thought about the years of doubting myself, of thinking I was picky or incapable, just because she said so. I turned around slowly. She was sitting there, small, bitter, and defeated, clutching a receipt for a pawned ring. I won't regret it, I said. I looked at my father, who was staring at the table. Dad, I said, do you remember what you told me when I called you crying because I couldn't pay my rent 5 years ago, when I asked for help and Mom told you to say no? Dad looked up, his eyes watery. You told me, figure it out. It builds character. I smiled. It was a genuine smile. You were right, Dad. It did build character. And now, you two have $148,000 of debt to figure out. I suggest you start building some character of your own. I opened the door and walked out into the hallway. Grandpa Everett put his arm around my shoulder. Miles and Tessa followed us out, leaving our parents alone in the cold conference room. We stepped out of the building into the bright, crisp winter air of Briar Glen. The snow was blindingly white. It looked clean. I took a deep breath. It was the first breath I had taken in 34 years that didn't belong to Janine Whitfield. It was mine. Waffles, Everett asked. Waffles, I agreed. And maybe a mimosa. I think I can afford it. I walked down the street, my boots crunching on the snow, and for the first time, I didn't look back. The war was over, and the audit was finally closed. Thank you so much for listening to Riley's story of reclaiming her life and her finances. It is a hard lesson, but sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while driving to work, cooking dinner, or maybe relaxing before bed? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading about where our community is listening from. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice and turning the tables, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel. Don't forget to hit that like button on the video, and if you really want to support us, press that hype button so this story can reach even more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, keep your receipts, and I will see you in the next story.